Hello everyone, I am Sital, Bera, Assistant Professor, Maths University, Raipur. I welcome you all in this lecture session, and in this session, we will comparatively discuss and study about the classical and the romantic concept of imagination. In this session, we'll come to know how classical writers and their trend of writing, their tone and temperament, their standards of writing, their artistic form, all those aspects of literature and art are different from than that of the writers of the romantic age. Romanticism and romantic writers, how they opposed the classical standards, the classical format or stylistic approach of writing. This in this session we will come to know about all those things. Now talking about classical age, as you all know that classical or classicism, it refers to the ancient literature and art forms of Rome and Greek. The ancient Roman and Greek writers, they were the real classists. They are known for classicism. But during the 17th century in England, a group of writers like John Dryden, Alexander Pope, then we have the example of Edmund Waller, John Denham. They revived the classical sense into literature, into art forms. They started to follow the classical sense, the classical standard of standard in writing. Now 17th century, because of that, is also known as classical age or age, didactic age. Why it is called didactic age? Because the writings or the composition of John Dryden, Alexander Pope, these are mere didactic in their tone. Then this age is also called Augustan age, like the development it occurred during the reign of King Augustus. Same thing, same literary growth is also occurred during that 17th century in England, and that's why comparatively, in a mode of comparison, this age is also called age of Augustan age. Now, age of reason and good sense, as they followed reason, logic, good sense of the classical writers. Because of that, this age is also called age of reason and good sense. During or in classical age in England, we also have a group of poets, metaphysical school of poets like John Donne, then Andrew Marvell, George Herbert, and some others. Their writing is very obscure, is having very high artistic value and standard, and they are metaphysical in their approach of writing, their use of very high standard language, their use of hyperbole, very conceits, obscure conceit, far-fetched imagination. They are known for that. Now Dryden, he is the most representative, or he is the most important classical writer of England or during 17th century. He also started the concept of, or he also started heroic couplet. The forms, rules, and the standard of heroic couplet, these were set by John Dryden. His writings, some of the most important poems of John Dryden are Absalom and Achitophel, Medal, The Hind and the Panther, and another literary figure of the classical age in England is Alexander Pope. He is also remembered for his mock heroic writing, his high standard language, his sense of criticism and satire. His writings or his some of the most important poems are an epistle to Dr. Arbuthnot, The Rape of the Lock, an essay on criticism, and some others. Now, if we analyze or if we discuss the trend, the approach, or the stylistic matters of the age, this age is also known as rules and laws. The writers, they followed certain rules and certain standards or laws in literature. Their writings are traditional. They are traditional. They followed past tradition. Then they are highly intellectual. This is another important aspect of their writing. Their writings or their works do have certain standard, remarkable or marked difference in standard and its form. Their language, sublime thought, and their didactic tone. The poems of Dryden, Alexander Pope, these are didactic. These are highly standard in its language, then form, style, and poetic forms, everything. And this age is also known for its growth of heroic couplet. So, if we sum up all the things, they followed certain rules and laws in their literature. They are traditional. They followed traditional set pattern of writing. Their writings are intellectual or they were intellectual. Their use of witty languages and certain poetic forms and certain poetic standard, and moreover their tone is didactic. Some messages, some lessons are there to be taught. Now coming to romantic age or romantic concept of imagination. In the romantic age or romanticism was started in the year 1798 with the publication of lyrical ballads, as you all know that. Here the remarkable or the representative poets of the romanticism or the romantic era are William Wordsworth, then S.T. Coleridge, P.B. Shelley, John Keats. Professor Herford, he defined romanticism as, it is to quote, primarily an extraordinary development of imaginative sensibility. Now you mark the words extraordinary development in the field of imaginative sensibility. So romantic poets, they are highly imaginative, they are highly sensible, they are very sensitive in the matters of nature, imagination, visual scenes. Now if you mark some artistic or some characteristics features of the writings of the romantic writers or the poets or the age, these are certain curiosity. The poems of all the romantic poets having certain curiosity and desire of beauty. They appreciate beauty, nature, natural objects, good human sense, simple human nature, imaginative. Romantic poets are highly imaginative. Then it's a revolt against tradition and conventional outlook. Romanticism or the romantic trend of writing is a distinct or is a certain revolt against tradition and conventional outlook. Socio-political rules and authority of literature is replaced in romantic era in the hands of romantic poets like Wordsworth, Shelley, Keats, and Coleridge. Socio-political rules, certain standards of literature, rules, format, stylistic pattern, all those things were replaced they gave due emphasis on simplicity. Then spontaneity. They were liberal. Their writing pattern, their poems, their trend of writing, it was very liberal. They are not very traditional or conventional. They became liberal. Spontaneity of their expression, spontaneous overflow of powerful emotions, as quoted by Wordsworth regarding the definition of poetry. So these things marked a clear difference between classical way of composition, classical sense of composition, their way of the process of creativity as compared to the romantic writers. Here, though all the romantic writers, they were very much close to nature and appreciation or desire of beauty, but there is a clear distinction between them. Individuality is another important feature. Individuality, Wordsworth, Shelley, Keats, Coleridge, they all were romantic. Still, they somewhere were different from one another. So individuality is another important factor or aspect of romantic age. Like Wordsworth, he is very close to nature. He writes about nature, simple human nature. Keats, for his creation of medieval atmosphere. Coleridge, for his mysticism and supernatural element, and Shelley for his lyrical quality. Poems of Shelley, these are highly musical, very lyrical in its form, in its nature. But Coleridge, his poems are obscure, mystic, supernatural, and Keats, medieval atmosphere. And Wordsworth, that the poems like Tinton Abbey, then all the Lucy poems of Wordsworth, the some odes, these all were or somewhere he appreciated, he talked about, he analyzed, or he appreciated nature, beauty, human life, humanity. So another two important aspects of romantic age and the romantic process of imagination are they are very much subjective in their selection of subject matter, in their selection of style. They are very much subjective, and their poems, their creative process is very much visual sense oriented. It creates some image in the mind, simple, rustic, very rural image is created in mind. Now talk about the poetic forms. In classical age, heroic, couplet and didactic poems, these were prominent, as in romantic age, ode and lyrical poetry. Lyrical poetry, these are highly musical or lyrical in quality, but didactic, they are witty, they are having certain messages, moral teaching, so all these things. So likewise, conception and the inner reality of mind, conception of and the inner reality of mind means imaginative. The romantic poets, they peep into the mind of readers, they peep into the mind of the people, and their imaginative venture into the depths of soul. They talk about soul, they talk about mind, they talk about simplicity, they talk about nature, talk about the desire of beauty, visual sense, and subjective tone. These are the all over, or these are the important aspects of romanticism and the romantic process of imagination. Now the most important or the standard definition of imagination, as we have come to know about after the publication of lyrical ballads, sorry, not Biographia Literaria, a critical treatise written by S.T. Coleridge, where he discriminated, where he differentiated imagination and fancy. He he has shown that how imagination and fancy both are different terms. Before the publication of lyrical ballads, though fancy and imagination were treated as same, but no, here he asserted that imagination is more sublime or more important in creative process, but fancy is some, it is little inferior in compared to imagination. It is the primary step. It gives the visual some vision into the mind, but when those scenes, those picture will be transformed into artistic form, then that is imagination. It is more creative faculty. Imagination is more creative faculty, as fancy is some inferior or some less important. It is the primary step of imagination. Fancy actually is the primary step of imagination. It floats in the mind, then those floating images or picture will be transformed into a shape, that will be imagination. So imagination is more important, and it is the creative faculty of a mind of a writer. So classical and romantic writers, classicism and romanticism are very different altogether. Classical romanticism or romantic trend, it was a certain reaction against classical literature or classical standards of writing. Thank you everyone.